Sonic Mania Adventures. I hope this is good. Sonic Returns. It's very weird to see a Game Sega logo at the start of a Sonic show. We start out hearing Angel Island music, and that's the setting. And the illusion purple field thing happens from Sonic Mania. Not very original. Sonic sees Eggman carrying away an animal capsule with his Eggmobile, and he goes through the jungle and instantly sees the capsule on the ground. Then he narrowly avoids a bunch of spikes from the ground, but of course is magically just fine at the end. He could at least get hit once and lose ring energy. He lands on a capsule and ends up hanging by a rope from his foot. Where'd he pull that emerald from? His aura, I guess. Did he just eat it? And Eggman ends up hanging by his foot over the same trap that he should have remembered the location of. This would never happen. It's not explained that his robot put the trap there and he didn't know where it was as a result. Then Eggman throws a bomb shaped like himself in front of Sonic. Never mind, I thought it was the bomb from Sonic 2's final boss. So why is it shaped like it if it's not going to blow up? That'd be so smart of Eggman, to surprise Sonic like that. Instead, it's a hologram projector taunting Sonic about the fact that Eggman has all the emeralds he doesn't have. It's not explained because there's no dialogue, but he has to do this because he has laryngitis. Everyone in the show has come down with laryngitis. It's really unfortunate. And so Sonic runs off. Eggman being humiliated like a Looney Tunes character reminds me of the Sonic the Comic 2-issue miniseries that had tons of Looney Tunes slapstick with Eggman. So I might like this if it doesn't stretch believability. It looks like I was right to assume I'd be able to fit more than one episode review into a single video, because shockingly, the episode's already over. Okay, so barely anything happened here, so it's hard to think of what I have to say. I've never seen Sonic narrowly dodge spikes coming out of the flat ground he was standing on multiple times in a row before in a genuine Sonic story. It's stolen from the games, just like everything else. Oh, except the rope hanging Sonic and Eggman by their foot. I like seeing that. Although it already happened in Archie with Antoine, but it's never happened with these guys before, I think. I liked seeing that Eggman was clever enough to catch Sonic in a trap because he landed on Animal Capsule. I did think it was way too Dairy Stewish of Sonic to miraculously avoid that many spikes though, but whatever. So this was not horrible? After all the horrible shit I've reviewed, full of irritating characterization and plot holes everywhere, this is bland and barely interesting without much effort in the plot, but it's at least passable. It didn't make me angry, so that's good compared to what it could be. I didn't rant about it for an hour or half an hour. The way it looks is fantastic. I wish Sonic Boom had hand-drawn animation like this. There's so much more you can do with it. But I fear that it was so high-budget and time-consuming that this is Sega's excuse for the episodes being only 2 minutes long. No, I'm not kidding. 2 and 20 seconds. Sega is so bankrupt by this point, or cheap, that this is all they can afford. That's sad after we had like 20-minute hand-drawn Sonic shows 4 times. What sucks about this is what it lacks. Length and dialogue. But to be fair, it works perfectly without the dialogue, for the plot it's trying to tell. I still knew exactly what was going on. My only big problem throughout was that the pacing was so fast that the entire time I was typing, I was behind on the action. When I was typing about the fact that Sonic avoided all those spikes, he had already started hanging from a rope. But that's only a problem for a reviewer, and I always have that problem reviewing the shows anyways. It's just that with scenes focused on dialogue, I have a bit more downtime because I can safely spend the time wasted on pointless dialogue typing about stuff that actually matters. Here, everything matters, so the pacing is awesomely fast. I wish Flynn's stories were like this. So far, it's alright. But the missed potential is obvious because it's way too short. Not to mention it's unoriginal. Also, it's really weird now to place to have the credits of an officially made Sonic show, or even a fan show, feature video game footage. And it really goes to show you how embarrassingly similar Sonic Mania looks to Sonic 1 and 2 at first, that I mistook it for Sonic 1 and 2 played back to back at first, because the credit square showed at a lower resolution on the smaller screen, so I couldn't see the Sonic sprite very clearly. The whole time I was typing my summary, I was seeing green hill zone in the corner of my eye, and assumed they were going the whole 9 yards with nostalgia pandering and showing footage of Sonic 1 at that point, which had nothing to do with the show. Then I actually thought to talk about the credits, and it dawned on me. Of course they're advertising Sonic Mania. It's the source of its music, animation, and title. But aside from the wider screen, honestly the only time it starts to look like a brand new game is when it gets a Studiopolis. The footage of Chemical Plant Zone should, logically, show off the stuff that's brand new, to actually have a chance at attracting an audience that already played Sonic 1 and 2 too much. But I guess it was smarter of them not to spoil it for those who hadn't played the game, because half the appeal is experiencing what's new for yourself for the first time. I love Sonic Mania, by the way. I just think it and the show being too similar to games made decades ago, before I was even conceived, is embarrassing marketing, because it's Sega admitting, our new games all suck. We have no confidence in our newer products, and neither do our fans. So we have to focus on the stuff made decades ago by people who have long since stopped working for us, because it's the only thing that's still popular. You'd think if they were that great now, they would be focusing on just great new stuff, and people would mostly be happy with it. Like most franchises. Mania being a 2D classic game and gameplay feel was the best thing the series could hope for, and they should keep doing that alternately from now on. But we need more than just that. We need actual creativity too. And I mean all the time, not just a third of the time. Also, it's a bad idea to put a teaser for the next episode, or whatever this is, at the end of the credits. Because if they were smart, they'd know that nobody sits through the credits of anything. Ever. Like, have they ever watched the show before? And the only reason I saw this was because I was reviewing it and felt the need to check to make sure. Because it would feel weird ending an episode in the middle of the video. It shows Metal Sonic. Wow, that's telling you about an actual plot, right? Well, I'm glad he's here at least. But just showing a character is the laziest thing to do to hype up a new story. Not that it's bad. It could still be great marketing if it was the right character, and not one we've seen a million times before. Expecting us to cheer just because we see a mindless robot again isn't comparable to, say, expecting us to cheer if we ever saw Sally or Bunny in a trailer for a new Sonic game. Nobody would care if it didn't tell us the plot at that point. Everybody would be talking about it. Why didn't Sonic Forces bring them into the games? It was so obvious. I can understand them having the teaser just be this though. Because maybe they really did have so little budget and time given to the show that they had no choice but to keep the teaser free of any hint of the plot. Come on, it's not Sonic X or Boom. I thought I'd be done calling Sega out and not giving their shows a budget. I hope the rest of my after episode summaries won't be this long. This is only this long because I'm talking about the show as a whole. Long story short, I don't see how arbitrarily having no dialogue ruins the show. But I do see how it could be called bland and uninspired, because just like there's no excuse for having no dialogue at all, there's also no excuse for being too much like the games. Even a fan fiction writer has more creativity than this. There was just one unique idea. Sonic and Eggman hanging from a rope attached to the foot, while not tied to a rocket going into space. Now for episode 2, Sonic and Tails. That's lazy. There's already a game in Japan called that. And this is probably going to have nothing to do with that game. We see Tails doing something impossible to tell with a biplane, and Sonic sits on the plane wing, and throws him the hologram projector from earlier because he has laryngitis. Wait, did it tell them where an emerald was? A rumble is heard because of Eggman's Eggmobile, which at first shows it has drills, but then it hits Sonic with a hammer and sends him over to the beach. It's smart that he has 2 things on it instead of just one. It was sweet that Tails took Sonic's hand as heartwarming music slowly played, and it took a while. But it was lazy to not show Tails helping him up. Sonic stands there like an idiot so that Tails has to rescue him from the drill. And then, Tails threw Sonic at the Eggmobile and he spin dashed at it. It happened so fast. So he beat him in one measly hit. This happened after the two of them both spun around the air like a Sonic 4 wheel, while Tails continued to fly above the ground for no reason other than air kitsune magic. Why in the world was Eggman just standing there doing nothing with the hammer drills the entire time and just staring at them waiting to be hit? That was outright forced. But at least Sonic got hit away really far, and so he had to deal with a little slapstick and humiliation. So his victory felt more earned. But they took away from that when they only won because Eggman was given the idiot ball and did nothing. That was my summary of the whole episode, in just 2 sentences. That's how little happened in it. If they wanted to show that Tails and Sonic have a great brotherly dynamic, you'd think Sonic ruffling Tails' hair would be obvious. Any pair of friends could help each other up. I didn't get why Eggman was there other than to fight Sonic until I rewatched the end of the episode and saw Tails pull an emerald out of the ground surrounded by some dust. So Eggman was trying to drill for the emerald all along, and wasn't just there to fight Sonic for the formulaic end of episode boss fight for meta logic. See, I would have known that right away if the show had dialogue, but whatever, I didn't need to know his plan right away if he was just gonna lose. This episode is fine until the Deus Ex Machina idiot bulb makes it stupid. Even then, I didn't have the time to notice and comment on that the first time I saw it. I had to rewind and look at the spinning again to realize how stupid Eggman was being. But only because I was busy typing about what happened earlier when I first saw them spinning around each other for that out-of-nowhere power that they had to beat him in one hit, which was a Deus Ex Machina, and the bigger, more noticeable problem is that it ended in one hit. But when the episodes are that short, it's much harder to have a Chekhov's gun, and they'd be discouraged from using it because it'd have to be insanely predictable because the thing would be fresh in our memories from 2 seconds ago. I don't think it's fair to call it a Deus Ex Machina if it makes logical sense, even if it comes out of nowhere, because you can't foreshadow everything. And if even most things were foreshadowed, the story would be too predictable. The only new idea here was, well, that the Sonic forward spin dash with Sonic and Tails was used midair and was sent towards Eggman as a projectile. That's still just a reinterpretation of an old idea. And Eggman was drilling with his Eggmobile from Sonic 3 with the intention of getting a Chaos Emerald specifically. Even then, Eggman wanting to drill into the ground for an emerald was already done in the first issue of the manga released to promote Sonic 1 decades ago. Although him drilling himself, instead of making robots do it, was original. It was sweet that Tails helped Sonic up. You know an episode's inexcusably short when the summary lasts longer than the main review every time. What was the fucking point of showing Metal Sonic at the end of the last episode if we didn't see him in this one? Oh, I almost forgot! There's an after credit scene. Eggman is sulking because he landed on the beach, although that probably should have injured him. I guess he had rings. I think it's cool that the reason Eggman spotted Knuckles from that far away was because he used his hologram projector thing to see through the eye of one of his badniks. Of course Eggman would be able to see through the eyes of his badniks, because what if one killed Sonic and he missed it? He spies on Knuckles, who's conveniently carrying his huge Master Emerald with him while walking through the forest when conventional Sonic fan knowledge since SE2 has told us that he can shrink the Emerald down to carry it secretly whenever he wants. He pulled it out of thin air in SE2's last story, and it was the size of a Chaos Emerald. Him just carrying a giant emerald while casually walking around looks goofy. I have to assume that this is right after Sonic 3, where the emerald got stolen, and he's bringing it back to where it's supposed to be. Otherwise, this would make no sense. And the story ends with him celebrating at seeing the Master Emerald so close to him. If Eggman was smart, like a genius should be, he'd pull out a ray gun and shoot Knuckles. Then he'd promptly find out that only Knuckles can carry an emerald that large, and he'd have to go back for his Eggmobile to carry it away with a crane. If this was supposed to foreshadow the fact that we'd see the biplane flying around with the Master Emerald connected to it later, then it completely failed at doing that. All we see is Eggman smirking at it. Good animation would show him actually going into the biplane and flying away with it. This tells us nothing, especially me because I was busy typing at the time, so obviously I missed this. Plus, Eggman's often portrayed as an idiot. How could I take it for granted that he'd get the idea to do this? Also, I'm pretty sure that in real life biplanes have keys, like ignition keys, and Eggman wouldn't be able to start it as a result. Does he have the tools to hotwire a biplane? More importantly, why on earth were Tails and Sonic away from it for so long? Like, what, were they on a bathroom break? You'd think that if Tails was so smart, he would have made a security system, a force field, specifically to prevent this from happening. Also, there was never any hint whatsoever in the entire franchise that Eggman was able to fly a biplane. This is why bad animation sucks. Like, it cut to black after this doesn't tell you what happened. I don't see this show as deserving outright dismissal at this point. I've reviewed much worse than this. At least it not having dialogue means that the review's done over with a lot faster. I have a lot less to nitpick of. But it should still be called out on for its flaws, which hold it back from being excellent. Now for episode 3. Let me guess, it'll be about Knuckles because we saw him in the after credit scene last time. And he's the third major playable character in Sonic and associated with Sonic 3, and Tails was in Sonic 2 and in the second episode. Even though if he were truly going in chronological order, Amy would show up before Tails. Especially since she first showed up in a manga that didn't start out having Tails in it. So I'm guessing the reason Amy was excluded was because she's not nearly as popular. In all seriousness, since Metal Sonic wasn't in episode 2, I'm wondering if Knuckles will even show up in this one. It would have been interesting to see a story with Metal Sonic as the protagonist for a change. And him not being able to talk wouldn't seem like such a deal breaker that he couldn't get a solo story because everybody has laryngitis in the show. So if Sonic and Tails can make it work, so can he. And Metal Sonic is popular. I'm guessing he's even more popular than Amy. Okay, now for episode 3. And Knuckles. I like that there is no long intro each episode. How does the Master Emerald not just topple over? There's no pedestal holding it upright. It'd make more sense if it was upside down. Knuckles wastes time remembering that people tried to steal it. Wow, padding in this show? I mean, there's barely any minutes in it. It's not acceptable to waste space. Finally, Ray the Flying Squirrel shows up to greet Knuckles. I'd be more hyped about this, but I already know he's in Sonic Mania Plus. Inexplicably, he refuses to shake Ray's hand. Then Ray holds up a picture of Mighty. Ray tries to touch the emerald because it's shiny and he's a kid, and Knuckles looks like a douchebag by throwing Ray, who is a child, by the way. I mean, why else would he be shorter than him? Then he has to fight a bunch of badniks, and at least they look damaged at the end, but the fight scene didn't look nearly as well animated as it should have. Twice, some sort of flash of light thing covers the screen, and then the show cut to him hitting the badnik. That wasn't as satisfying as fluid animation. And why are Knuckles' eyelids not red? I criticized that in the Knuckles comic. Then the Master Emerald inexplicably disappears. And Knuckles sees it attached to a magnet behind the biplane, a magical magnet that can attract gemstones. And he gets mad because Sonic is stealing the emerald. Why would he care though? He should know that Sonic and Tails are good people and his friends. If they ever took the emerald, it'd be for a very good reason. So there's no logical reason to be possessive of it here. It's shocking that it ends here and that was Ray's only part of the plot. It would suck if Ray only ever showed up again because of Sonic Mania Plus, and never showed up again in the games. What was Ray doing on the island? Why do you think he'd find Mighty here, if he's apparently not already a trusted friend of Knuckles? I can only assume Ray and Mighty usually live on Angel Island, like in the Knuckles comic. But then why aren't they already friends enough with him that he wouldn't punch a child for wanting to touch his emerald? The after credits scene isn't even worth talking about. There's no story. This episode sucked. All that happened was, Knuckles was a douchebag to Ray and sent him flying for merely wanting to touch the emerald when he should know better than that. And Ray's a child, at least in his most common interpretation. So Knuckles was written like a bad fanfiction exaggeration. We didn't even see Ray again in this episode, so for all I know, he got injured. And we are given no indication that he didn't get injured just because he happened to have rings at the time. Knuckles didn't know that he had rings though. And then he fought a bunch of mere badniks. You'd think Eggman would send much more threatening robots than that. I mean, he knows who Knuckles is. But the action scene was so cheaply animated that it wasn't worth it because it wasn't even remotely satisfying to see. Just a bunch of smash cuts. It might as well have been a comic book. We're not in Sonic X anymore. And seriously, I know it was meant to be goofy, funny slapstick, but even Ken Penders would never write Knuckles punching away a child like Ray and sending him flying just because he wanted to touch a jewel of his. I could imagine Knuckles simply telling him not to and standing in front of him, but that's it. Even Ian Flynn would have never written him like this. Even in the first reboot universe arc that Knuckles was in, he wrote him like SE2 Knuckles. Not like a violent idiot who mindlessly attacks anyone who touches his emerald like he's just a robot. Not a relatable, rational person. This isn't funny, it's character degradation. At least Boom Knuckles is nice. He's unfunny and confusing, but I couldn't imagine him doing this. And he feels a bit more like an actual person when he cares about something other than just guarding a gem. At least he likes to have fun. This might be the worst portrayal of Knuckles I've ever seen. I also thought it was bad animation that the emerald wasn't in a pedestal that would logically hold it upright. I was just wondering why it didn't topple over, which would have actually been amusing to see. I think even Kent Penders didn't have this problem. Didn't the Chaos Chamber have a pedestal that kept the emerald held up in it? Granted, I've reviewed much worse, much more obviously bad stories than this. This was a waste of time, but it wasn't outright aggravating. But it's clearly a creative wasteland if this is the only story they thought of giving Knuckles. I mean, he should at least have a few stories that involve him guarding the emerald. But I thought it was common sense that his story wouldn't involve him just staying with the Master Emerald in one place. And the only new idea was him being evil to Ray. Hopefully part 4 will be better. Mighty and Ray. Good, Ray gets another story. We start out with Ray walking around missing Mighty. Then I wonder how it makes sense that Metal Sonic was in the shadows, impossible to see when he was that close to Ray. He wasn't in the bushes still. You'd think that the natural daytime lighting would light him up better. He runs towards Ray after shredding his wanted poster, and Mighty jumps in front of him. I guess he runs towards him because he's a mindless killer robot, but he's programmed to do what Eggman wants. Well, did Eggman tell him to do that? What does he have to gain in this, actually? And Mighty jumps in front of him, somehow without Metal just continuing on and hurting either of them. Mighty throws a boulder at Metal they summoned out of nowhere. Ray and him have a cute brotherly moment, and Mighty helps Ray up and they waste time staring at each other. So Metal's able to pick up Ray and use him as a hostage, forcing Mighty to give him the Chaos Emerald so he can fly away with it. Then Mighty throws Ray onto the tree to spot Metal Sonic, who flies at the speed of sound, by the way. Then he sees Sonic running around, so I have to assume he'll be able to stop him, and they know that, and that's why they're still happy. And Knuckles is still mad. This episode was about Mighty miraculously showing up to save Ray from Metal Sonic, who arbitrarily tried to kill him for no explained reason. Somehow Mighty was able to jump in front of Metal Sonic before he could ram into Ray at Sonic speed. I guess Metal Sonic had been sent to the island to steal their emerald, but then what took him so long? And why didn't Metal Sonic seize the opportunity to hurt or kill either of them when they were standing there doing nothing in the middle of a battle? Instead, he plays unusually smart for a mindless killer robot by threatening Ray to get an emerald out of Mighty. Though with the Sonic speed, it might be smarter to just spin dash at him while he was distracted. Why was Mighty ever missing? How did he escape and get back here, conveniently in just the right time and place to save Ray? Why'd Ray know to go to Angel Island if Knuckles treated him like he didn't already know him? If they just moved there, then why? These are all important questions that I would have known the answer to if there was dialogue. This is the kind of thing I was worried about, where no dialogue creates plot holes. It's bad enough that the whole story is forced because Metal Sonic didn't win against them effortlessly. Metal Sonic can move at Sonic speed. He would have obliterated both of them. We're not told that Mighty is just as fast as Sonic, which would have been consistent to Knuckles' chaotics. The story makes no sense, so it sucks. The Mighty is missing gimmick isn't funny, it's just annoying to people who actually know about the Sonic franchise at all. Because we all know that Mighty was in the comics. He was always in Fleetway, and he was always in Archie. He was always one of the main characters there. He was never missing. But oh, he was missing from the games. Like, the games are not the only thing that matters. The only good thing about this is that Mighty and Ray have a heartwarming brotherly dynamic, just like an Archie. It makes me wonder if that wasn't just a Ken Penders concept, and instead Penders did that because there was a Sega Bible telling him that this was how they were together. After all, Mighty also has super strength here, when he doesn't even have that in the games. The only times he had super strength were in the comics. And the only time he ever acted like this with Ray was in Archie. So either the writers of Sonic Mania Adventures actually did their research before writing these characters, and made Archie concepts from Penders canon elsewhere, or less excitingly, this was always meant to be the case, and it's just that the first games they were in never made these things clear. It's probably the latter, because wouldn't they be obligated to pay Penders royalties if they were using concepts he thought at first? I doubt he'd know about this. But yeah, they got their dynamic right. Whoop-de-doo, that's how it's supposed to be in every story they share together. Average doesn't mean fantastic. The plot still needs to make sense. If you're not gonna try to have the plot make sense, at least go over the top all the way with it and have it be so silly that it's entertaining regardless. Like have Knuckles be a pirate with a pirate's hat. Now for part 5. Why is this the only show that Sega proudly presents? Like, it's unfair. It's only 2.5 minutes long, and it's just about the games. It doesn't make any sense that this is the one they'd be the most proud of. Okay, Metal Mayhem. We start out seeing the sky red and being polluted with realistic smoke from a death egg. That's great graphics. I felt like saying graphics because it's too much like the games. In spite of that, the scene reminded me of Sad AM. Then Metal Sonic shows up, and Sonic and Tails get forced to stay still. Never mind, they get sent out of that state real quick after Metal gets powered up by every emerald. Dumbass! Sonic then grabs Metal's hands to hold him still, immediately reminding me of when Sonic grabbed Mecha Sally's hands to hold her still multiple times. Mighty interferes, and somehow they run towards him and he doesn't instantly reach them with a sonic speed. And the action scene's completely ruined by turning it into a comic book, with freeze frames that keep you from being invested. This doesn't deserve to have this music. This was the same music I played for Robotnik's epic moments of badassery in Sonic the Comic. Like when he destroyed the heroes' base, and when he powered up with the life energy of the planet. Then Metal Sonic stays still like an idiot. I guess Tails hacked into him? And he gets paralyzed in his own trap and knocked down. Suddenly it turns out he was on top of the Master Emerald. He was? No, he wasn't. And Knuckles punches away and walks away with the Master Emerald, somehow not bitching at Sonic for stealing it. I don't understand. I thought Sonic had the Master Emerald. Did Eggman take it from his plane? That sounds like something we should have seen. Why did he have the Emerald in the first place? It's already over. And it ends with Sonic and his friends eating chili dogs, something that Sega Japan started acknowledging as Sonic's favorite food ever since Sonic Generations. And now it's in something completely Japanese. It's like Sega Japan is wisening up, and in fact, there's actually a video saying that they're more interested in the American stuff than they were before. And Mighty proved that earlier. This episode sucked. I'm just confused, not finding it awesome. So much happened in the fight scene that I can't really mention it all. I don't feel like it was choreographed well at all. Part of what ruined the scene was that for no reason, they went into comic book panel freeze frames and showed them all 4 at a time. Not helping that each comic book panel was pretty small. It's not like it took up the whole screen. And so, it'd be guaranteed that I'd see it when I was typing. This isn't Sonic X anymore. I'd expect much better animation from a show like this. Basically, Sonic and his friends all ganged up on Metal Sonic. How did Mighty and Ray and Knuckles all arrive at the Death Egg at the same time despite Sonic's speed travel? Well, he might have been running slightly slower than that so Tails could keep up. But Tails was always a fast flyer, as SDC and the Sonic X comic showed. And they were that way because they were imitating the games. Maybe he flies at Sonic speed too. My point is, they would have taken a bit longer to get here than this. I liked Mighty helping out in the fight while Sonic held Metal still. If Tails could hack into Metal Sonic, then why wasn't he hacking into him from the start the entire time? Not to mention hacking every robot. That would have made him hacking him to keep him still feel more well-earned because he'd have to take longer to do it than 2 seconds. Metal Sonic was clearly surrounded with golden fire after he powered up with the emeralds. 1. Why are the heroes not burned when they hit him? And 2. How'd they hurt him at all when he clearly should be invincible because he's gone super? And 3. Why does he simply have a golden aura around him when Mecha Sonic turned gold when he went super? You'd think they'd know about the games because this is all about just being like the games. And it's not like he got progressively more damaged over time. So it never once felt like they were actually accomplishing anything when they were fighting him. It was just a waste of time until finally Metal Sonic got caught in his own paralyzer trap that robbed him of the emeralds. It's at least a Chekhov's gun. If those traps were holding Sonic and Tails still, why the fucking fuck did they ever get released from them by Metal Sonic? It would have worked if we saw Mighty break the trap to free them naturally. Metal Sonic just looked like an idiot there. At least it makes sense that he didn't just kill all of them with Sonic's speed, because Sonic was there, and he was able to keep him occupied and grab him to hold him still whenever he wanted. And we can assume that Tails had rings so they didn't die in one hit from Metal Sonic hitting him at Sonic speed. The logic in this fight scene wasn't as good as it should have been, so I spent the whole time confused, which was too distracting. At first I couldn't believe they used that epic music. Then I realized that the scene didn't deserve it. Why in the world did Eggman just rely on Metal Sonic? If this music is from a final boss fight, why didn't Eggman build giant robots to accompany Metal Sonic? Or fight in a mecha? Then maybe he'd have more of a chance. But I guess that'd be too much work for the animators, and that's why. It's out of character for him to purely rely on Metal Sonic for the final boss fight, without even putting his consciousness in a giant robot body like Knuckles' Chaotix. I don't think there was a single new idea in the story. Unleashed already had Sonic trapped and robbed of his emeralds in the opening. Also, Eggman must have still had laryngitis like everyone else here to not complain about Tails using his own device to hack into Metal Sonic. A device that was purely programmed to tell Sonic that he got a bunch of emeralds, by the way, and shouldn't have been able to hack anything. I guess Tails modified it in his spare time so it could hack into stuff. If only Nicole was in the story. She could have easily fit in here as the one hacking into Metal Sonic. It wouldn't feel quite as overpowered because at least she's an AI. Being entirely technology, well, it's a bit harder to believe that Tails can do anything technology when he's just a kid. This is how she could fit in the games. Now for the final part, the holiday special. Why isn't there snow right away? Eggman gets flung over to a collapsed Metal Sonic. I guess he had rings because he's fine. And then we see time pass and it does become winter. And I don't think jungle should have snow. Amy finds Metal Sonic and is fortunately wearing a winter coat. Metal Sonic somehow has the energy to look over at her, and his eyes are still on, and yet he's still unconscious? I mean, he has to be. How would he... If he has energy, even at this point, which is completely impossible, why doesn't he attack her or run back to Eggman? How could he have any energy, let alone a little bit? I love that she rescued a robot like him from a falling palm tree. It was a great way to show how sweet Amy's meant to be. It harkened back to SA1. It was confusing that she kept hitting him with her hammer after she thought he was awake. That really stands out in contrast with what just happened, and it's confused. It's like they cared more about trying to be funny. But to be fair, why wouldn't she be scared? But the point is that they didn't have to write this. There's no way he'd be able to turn his head still. She drags him over to Eggman's base and stands him up with a ribbon on his head that she happened to have with her just in case, and gives his glove a flower that she happened to have just in case. So he gets taken back to Eggman, and Sonic was right there. And Sonic was apparently right there. So she gives him a flower she inexplicably had in the winter. Okay, what the fuck was she thinking? I naturally assumed that she would be taking Metal Sonic to Tails' lab, and Tails would reprogram him to be a good guy. Wasn't that obvious? Granted, this is still sweet, and Amy should always be like this. This gets Amy's character, for once. This should be her main personality trait. Even her crush on Sonic is being sweet, not a joke. For one, well, I guess Sonic Mania Adventures' continuity has Eggman's house be at Angel Island, since she's able to drag him there. I guess Amy's house is on Angel Island too. So that is unique in the continuity, for once. But for a continuity slavishly loyal to the games, it's confusing. But yeah, while the episode was incredibly sweet with Amy salvaging Metal Sonic when Eggman didn't feel like it, and it portrayed Amy so well that I couldn't believe I was seeing that in anything official. Ultimately, this episode's ending completely ignored a brilliant opportunity that was immediately obvious the second one of Sonic's friends started rescuing Metal Sonic. It just made her look like an idiot. Who the hell would do that and take him back to Eggman instead of to Tails? If Tails repaired him, that'd do a lot more good. Amy's lucky she had her hammer, because classic Amy only became known for that hammer starting with Sonic the Fighters. That was the era where Tails had a hammer in the same amount of games. And Tails' Adventure. If we were going by only the well-known classic games, like this show was, Amy would be defenseless. So that's a great case of doing the research. It'd be lame if they gave it to Amy just because modern Amy had the hammer instead. Because if that was their reasoning, I'd rather see her with a crossbow or something. That'd be a lot more true to classic Amy, because classic Amy used a crossbow way more than a hammer. Fleetway Amy was part of the classic era, so she's classic Amy. If Eggman's base is an actual house above ground that even Amy knows the location of, why haven't all the militaries of the world destroyed it if even Amy can get to it without having to get past a force field or a huge security system that common sense would dictate would be there? Also, Amy getting to have winter clothes completely disproves the lie that the mandate that Sonic characters aren't allowed to change outfits is a universal one from Sega, because you'd think a brand new show would be affected by it if anything. If this was the Archie reboot, only Flint's writing would get away with having her in that outfit, and any other writer would get told no unless they made a good enough case for it. Like how Captain Metal got to exist, and there was more than one Metal Sonic. I think the show was alright at first, but as I feared, no dialogue does create distracting plot holes later on, and there are some bad episodes. But no dialogue doesn't ruin the show. The biggest problem is the lack of creativity and originality. Oh yeah, and the episodes are way too short. That's the real biggest problem. Well, at least the show doesn't have Antoine in it.